Well, welcome back to a slightly delayed new episode of Red Tinted Glasses. I have managed to pull Calum away from the cocktails in Budapest to get this recorded. When you're listening to this, we're not decided. It depends on the editing process and how well this episode goes. But Calum, first of all, how are you enjoying your time in Budapest?
Fantastic so far, as you said. Probably just about averaging a cocktail a day, so can't complain. Loving the pina coladas. It's fantastic. A lovely city. I feel like I'm doing Eurovision. It's like live from Budapest. Aberdeen gets no points. It's great. The land of Zoltan Varga as well. Let's not forget. What's not to love? Would highly recommend it for anyone looking for a city break.
You might get a job with the Budapest Tourist Board yet. But no, obviously recording this on Friday lunchtime was kind of allowed us to digest the fallout from the Rangers game, which includes Scott Brown's departure from the club. So it's not just Scott Brown that's left Aberdeen this week. Obviously, Calum leaving, but Calum is coming back, unlike Scott Brown. And we will, of course, provide our thoughts on that. And we will also look into the international call-ups, obviously with the international break coming up after the Hibernian game. But as always, just thank you once again for your support and patience, I suppose, this week in waiting for this episode. You guys have been looking at the back catalogue of episodes where we've hit 40,000 listening hours and also 10,000 hours of watch time on YouTube. Pretty remarkable stuff, Calum.
It is lovely. I mean, the fact people are willing to tune into that much time of us just talking nonsense really is quite something. So thank you very much for the continued support. Continues to somewhat confuse me a little bit and amaze me.
Yeah, and the support obviously will hopefully convey to the pitch. Obviously Aberdeen just now, the results aren't going the way we've hoped for, and I suppose we should look back at that Rangers game. It was a weird one, Calum, because obviously, as we discussed in our last episode, you were there. I watched at home, and I can't help but feeling proud of the performance, but equally frustrated and disappointed that we didn't come away with anything. I don't know, obviously being there, it must have felt like the longest 80 minutes of your life before they ended up scoring. But what was your thoughts on the performance and game as a whole?
It did. When you said we've got to talk about it, I thought, really, do you have to? I mean, in terms of an Aberdeen perspective, there wasn't, too many chances or things to talk about. It did feel like a very, very long game. It felt almost inevitable that they'd eventually probably grab a goal. But for the most part, I thought we, defended pretty well. Contained them at times very, very well, and just failed to create, I suppose, chances of our own. But going to Ibrox, I suppose that is, often very difficult, let alone when you're Aberdeen right now and you're on the run of form that you're on, and on the road you can, barely hit the target, let alone get a goal. And when it's at Ibrox, the home of the champions, unfortunately, I wasn't too. I was just disappointed in the manner that we ended up losing the goal. I was somewhat cheered up by the lovely bibs that the Rangers fans were wearing, ponchos, and a relatively nice day in Glasgow. It was quite bizarre. Just turning around and looking at them, looking like that, sort of cheered me up a little bit at times. So, that's something.
Yeah. I mean, the staunch ponchos were out in force, and I liked how as the game wore on, they gave up on them. Almost as much as they were giving up on their team scoring, unfortunately, until once again I was going to say uncharacteristic, but it seems to be characteristic defence in giving away goals reared its ugly head. But as always, Calum, we'll look at the team news. It was great to see Ross McCrory back in providing some bite into the centre of our midfield, which has been lacking in recent weeks. From a certain Scott Brown that did not appear in the matchday squad, further fueling the rumours that there'd been some form of, training ground or dressing room bust up, both him and J. Emmanuel Thomas not featuring in the matchday squad. And Conor McLennan's somewhat, maybe surprisingly to some, returning to the starting lineup. But as obviously you said, with Matty Kennedy picking up an injury, he missed out. So maybe McLennan there's the obvious replacement. What was the feeling like in the pub and amongst the fans for you at the time when you saw that Scott Brown wasn't involved in that team?
I was a bit surprised, but he featured against Hearts. Maybe he didn't perform particularly well, but I think that's sort of the general consensus. Well, I sort of felt like he was maybe at least going to stick around to the end of the season. You didn't think he was going to end up chucking it, with just a few games to spare. So I was very shocked to see that he wasn't included, especially since, in the games, you look at the games that he definitely provided what he was brought in to do. The 2 games against Rangers were certainly them. Yeah, exactly. So it was a bit of a surprise, and I perhaps think we probably could have done with him in that midfield as well. I mean, I don't know. He's at times he's delivered exactly what you brought him in for. At times he's looked a passenger, but as I just said, those were sort of the games that you would think he'll be right up for it, and he'll drag the rest of the players up with him. And then the fans, I suppose, would feed off that. He'd love to wind them up too. It was pretty disappointed, I suppose, that he didn't feature, but it all sort of makes sense now, I suppose.
Yeah, it absolutely does. And we will get into the Scott Brown segment, after we've looked at this game. Yes, unfortunately, we do need to talk about it. But, I suppose, we're recording this nearly a week after the game. So, hindsight's a wonderful thing. We've kind of tweeted out our thoughts on the Twitter page. If you don't follow us, check us out at @RTG_podcast. It felt, Calum, as the game developed, we'd certainly set ourselves out not to win the game, but at least come away with a point. Is saying that we set ourselves out not to win the game harsh on Jim Goodwin?
Maybe a little bit, but then you look at the statistics and you go, yeah, okay, fair enough. I think the plan was probably just to stay in the game as long as possible and sort of hope for the best. Maybe we can nick something, or as we probably would have hoped, to hold on for the point as well, which didn't come to fruition. But I can understand going into a game like that. I mean, given, as mentioned before, as we mentioned plenty of times on the show, just our run of form on the road, especially, let alone just this season in general. Certainly can't blame him. And we did look, for the most part, a lot more organised, a lot more defensively sound too. Obviously, Rangers had a few chances, but didn't give up that many clear-cut ones, given how many goals we've sort of given away this season so far. So certainly couldn't really complain about that, but it did sort of look the way. And then once you look at the post-match stats, I think it was 2 shots, none on target,
none on target,
38% possession. It didn't make for too great viewing, but for the most part, it was almost successful, I suppose.
I know, and I think this is where I'm kind of feeling a bit conflicted, because I get the argument about, folks saying, oh, we should have, had more of a go, and the way that we set up was really poor. But, you could flip it on the other head and say that if we, set up and had a go at Rangers, okay, we did that at Ibrox earlier in the season and found ourselves 2-0 up. But with how fragile we have been defensively this season, we could have done that last week and found ourselves 2-0 down inside 20 minutes. And then folk would say, well, we were actually, Calum, we were critical on this show about Jim Goodwin's comments about making us defensively sound after that Hearts game. And from that Hearts game to, 80 minutes at Ibrox looking very defensively sound, it was nothing short of quite a remarkable turnaround. So it feels like almost catch-22 for Jim Goodwin here. If he sets us up too defensively, folk are going to moan, saying we should be doing more going forward. But if we go forward more and concede 2 or 3, then he's going to get, criticised for saying, well, he's got to shore up the defence, and that's what he said he was going to do.
Yeah, it's a bit of a sort of a catch-22. What is it? Catch-22. There we go.
You had one cocktail this morning, then, haven't you?
Yeah, sorry about that. I wasn't going to tell you. I thought I was going to get away with it. No, but he's sort of damned if he doesn't, damned if he does, I guess. Damned if you do, damned if you don't. I'm getting all the sayings wrong. You know what I'm trying to say? You're
really tripping yourself over here.
If he goes and we go out there flying out the traps and then we end up getting smacked, they'll just pick us off on the counter attack and they'll take their chances. I mean, look at the players they have, and then the players they have on their bench as well too. as much as it wasn't enjoyable viewing, the game, it would have been even less so if we were 3-0 down at halftime.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you can't understand a game like that when it's not his squad. He's clearly not happy with the players he has just now. In fact, he was without players that maybe he would have preferred to have had. You can sort of understand going into the game like that and just sort of hoping that we can, stay in the game as long as possible, maybe pick something up off them, as we've seen, teams do against us, like St Johnstone and Motherwell have done so far this season against us very well. So it's understandable, as much as the end result is still frustrating.
Yeah, absolutely. But, the first half was a very grim 45 minutes to watch, from both sides. I think both sides offered very little and couldn't really get anything going in the final third. And, I wanted to tweet at halftime, but I also didn't want to jinx him, was how impressed I was with Declan Gallagher in that first half. You could maybe say it was more Rangers corners, just every time seemed to land on top of his head. But, a player that seems to be getting a lot of criticism, or certainly has received a lot of criticism during his time at Aberdeen, seemed to excel in that game for large parts. I was listening to Open Goal this morning, and they were saying, maybe he could have done a bit better at the goal that we conceded. But by and large, I thought he was very solid throughout. Yeah,
I would agree. And I'd probably say that about most games since Goodwin's come out of the door, other than, the one where he had half an hour to prepare for. He did end up giving away a soft goal. But I have been impressed with Declan Gallagher. I don't know if him and David Bates will be the partnership that will, for long term. But I certainly think Gallagher's probably the man that's going to, if one of them is going to keep their place in the first team next season, it's probably going to be him. He's not the most flashy defender. He's not going to come out from the back and go an amazing run and play an amazing pass. But as a penalty box defender, he can be one of the better defenders in the league. If you just ask him, he's limited, fair enough. But if you just ask him to, do the standard job of a centre back, especially in Scotland, then he can be very, very good at it. As we've mentioned before, he kept Alexander Mitrovic in the playoffs very, very quiet, and he's gone and broken the championship scoring record with about 10 games to go still. So who knows how he'll end up doing. So he is a capable defender, and I'm certainly more impressed in these recent games than I had been prior. More to the point, he's actually getting a run of a few games without, dropping out through injury or whatever.
Yeah, I was actually going to quote Belgrade in that tweet at halftime, and I thought, no, that's definitely maybe a step too far and maybe a bit too soon as well for Declan Gallagher. But, we were frustrating Rangers during that first half. You could sense it coming through on the commentary that unfortunately I had to endure with the perfectly legal stream that I was watching on. And, that carried into the second half, I felt, Calum. They were huffing and puffing, claiming for pass backs that were never pass backs. And we were defending really resolutely, yes, continuing to offer the square root of nothing going forward. I would love to see Christian Ramirez's touch map in that second half, even if it made double figures, let alone how many of that touches were in the opposition half. Mm-hmm. But, Jim Goodwin had decided we were coming for a point, and the players were doing their damnedest to earn that point. And at the same time, up until, Giovanni Van Bronckhorst made a couple of changes, we really did look very solid.
Yeah, I think for the most part we definitely did, and you could probably sense that frustration a little bit in the crowd as well. I suppose too. It gives us some sort of encouragement, that sort of performance, but just sort of defensive resoluteness for the most part of the game, and it's something hopefully we can then build off of. I can't remember who it was that said this, but it's much easier to teach a team to defend than it is to teach defensive players to attack. So let's hope we can get this out of them, and hopefully, say something to build off. It's not really much to build off, but I suppose a little bit of confidence going into the Hibs game given how they've been doing recently. Seems like they don't want to finish fourth either. No, nobody does. It's great.
No, we'll come on to that preview of the game at the weekend later on in the episode today. But unfortunately, despite how well we were defending, players do get tired with the constant defending. Conor McLennan, I don't know if he picked up a knock or was just knackered. He was replaced by Jack McKenzie. He came in to defend. And then Johnny Hayes, who'd almost run himself into the ground, it looked like, when he was pictured on the subs bench, was subbed off for young Calvin Ramsey. We're going to come on to the goal in a second, but I'm not one for, when you're getting to that stage of the game and your team are defending, stoutly, really frustrates me, whatever game I'm watching, not just Aberdeen, but even as a neutral, when you start then changing your defence because you've got players that are coming fresh into a game. They're not up to the pace of the game. And 90 seconds later, after Calvin Ramsey comes on, we find ourselves 1-0 down, and all that hard work that we'd done for the 80 minutes prior, it is just undone through kind of two moments of, I don't know, one's maybe poor concentration and one you're hoping that your players may be a bit stronger.
Yeah, a little bit, but at the same time, you look at the size of Calvin Bassey and then you look at the size of Calvin Ramsey, and then I'm like, yeah, fair enough. Can't expect.
Do you think it's a foul?
Soft. It'd be very soft. I would love for it to be being a foul, not only for the fact we wouldn't have conceded then, but also just for the seethe. That would have been fantastic. But for me, probably not a foul. I think it's just a case of Calvin Bassey being stronger than Calvin Ramsey and winning the battle of the Calvins. Can't blame Ramsey too much, I feel like, for that, given we just look at the size of him, just feel sorry for him.
I don't know. I saw a comment in one of the replies to one of our tweets saying, you had players through that 80 minutes, defending for their lives, and Calvin didn't really look like he was defending like his life depended on it. I know it's maybe a bit of an over-exaggeration, but
a little bit.
Yeah, but it was maybe a bit alcohol fueled by the person in question. I know if they're tuning in, they'll know who I'm speaking about. But it's one of those things. I think he's almost stumbling before kind of Calvin Bassey goes into the back of him. He's caught out maybe by the flight of the ball, but it just really frustrates me because once again, it's a goal that's come down that right-hand side. Calvin Ramsey's linked to the goal occurring. We know we'd kind of defended him or gave him an excuse of the transfer speculation was maybe turning his head when some goals were getting conceded down that side in January and early February. But, we're a month on, that should be kind of past it now. And it's becoming more of a common occurrence and people will start pick up on it. But again, I know you're maybe going to caveat and say he's only 18. It's his first full season in the Premiership. We should be cutting him some slack.
I think so. And as much as, there is no question if quite a lot of the goals have come down his side, I'm not going to, go and slaughter the boy because it is a lot for him. It just being sort of thrown in there and sort of straight to the top kind of thing. And then with all these rumours, I mean, his poor little tiny legs as well. I mean, God, it's not going well for him. Was he thrown on at right wing though? Because he certainly looked that way at times from where we were.
I don't know. It was difficult to tell. To be honest, once we went 1-0 down, and admittedly I lost interest because we'd shown no attacking intent up until that point.
I do specifically remember seeing Ojo being far deeper than him and him being high up the right-hand side. And that was just after he came on. Well,
I mean, when you look at the goal, I mean, that was going to be my next point is, for the blame that maybe people are apportioning Calvin Ramsey, should there also be some blame on Funso Ojo, who, again, up until that point, I thought was outstanding. Mm-hmm. But one lapse in concentration, I think he could maybe get out to Glen Kamara quicker. He gives Glen Kamara that space. He doesn't get tight enough to Glen Kamara in the first instance. So Glen Kamara's then got the option to drive towards the byline. Mm-hmm. And it's a very, poor attempt. His kind of jumps towards stopping the cross. And that decision to do that, in turn, when Tavernier heads the ball back in back in the direction of Joe Aribo and Kemar Roof. Kemar Roof is then played onside because Ojo is standing on the byline in play, but also for all the blame Funso Ojo's getting in playing Roof onside, I think Ross McCrory, I'm not sure what he's doing in terms of he's not really picking anybody up, but he's also, for me, looks like he's playing Kemar Roof onside. So it's just one of those things for how well we defended for 80 minutes. Once again, we've let ourselves down. I know there's maybe some people will question whether or not, I thought on the replay it was handball by Joe Aribo in getting to Kemar Roof, but it's one of those things that happens at 100 mile an hour, and also it's also happened at Ibrox, so there's no way that decision is going to be made.
Very true.
But yeah, it's so frustrating because we'd battled so hard, but ultimately it wasn't to be.
And can you question maybe Declan Gallagher as well? He may be stronger there, slightly gets rolled a little bit by Kemar Roof. For all the credit we've given him up until that point, he was excellent, but I think there maybe he could do a little bit better.
Yeah, and I heard you saying why was I listening to Open Goal. Well, I want to kind of hear what their thoughts on the game was, and it was something that Kevin Kyle picked up on. He said, exactly what you've said. For as well as he'd done, maybe just switched off that second. He should have gotten goal side of Kemar Roof instead, because obviously Kemar Roof's goal side, and that's allowed him to get the space to tap it in the net. I don't know. I think you can see with one of them, when the ball's getting played from one end to the other, the defenders are getting dragged all over the shop. And I mean, like I said, we've really not covered ourselves in glory at all through that passage of play. But that's kind of been the story of our season when it comes to conceding goals away from home.
It has been. I think between in the goal, it's just probably collectively a little bit soft. And I suppose if any of those individuals really cut out maybe their personal mistake, then maybe the goal doesn't quite happen. But it's one of those things. It's typical. I mean, it doesn't take away from the fact for the rest of the game we just defended pretty well. I mean, our reaction to the goal was virtually non-existent, and then that cross from Jack McKenzie. Is that
surprising though?
No, but that cross from Jack McKenzie or whatever it was, I mean, he really put on a show there. Let me tell you that much.
I mean, I genuinely don't even know what you're speaking about right now.
You don't have a clue, right? So you'd stop paying attention. Basically, we had a chance to get the ball in the box. To be fair, I think there was maybe one player to aim at in the box, and he just shanked it straight out for a goal kick. It was horrendous. It was our only highlights. Obviously, I had to watch the highlights back. It was our only highlight on the SPFL YouTube channel. The only one.
I'm glad they're classing that as a highlight.
I think it was just because it was funny, probably.
I suppose after the goal, we should pick up on the fact that Dante Polvara does exist. He has survived his operation, and he did come on for his debut. So congratulations to Dante for being the second American this season to play for Aberdeen.
Definitely. I mean, I admit I had no idea that happened at the time as well. And I saw it on Twitter after, and I was like, oh, brilliant. Good for him. So there you go. And congratulations. Maybe we'll see more of him between now and the end of the season, I suppose. Probably depends on where we are in the league.
And there is a midfield position suddenly become available for the remainder of the season.
That's very true.
I suppose, I did mention refereeing and decision makings. It would be rude not to mention some of Brother Beaton's decision making. Especially when it comes to Lewis Ferguson, who seems to pick up a customary booking in these games, booked for blocking a free kick in the first half. And then when Kemar Roof does it on Lewis Ferguson with 5 minutes to go, no decision, no yellow card from John Beaton, just absolutely baffling, no inconsistency. Well, consistently shite if you want to be on that. But, Free Enwakali tweeted the two clips out on Twitter. We gave it a retweet, and, two former guests of the show, Jack Grimmer, coming out, replying to the tweet from Free Enwakali saying, expect nothing less. I think it was with the emoji of someone spewing. Yeah. So, Jack knows. And if you haven't already, listen back to that interview with Jack Grimmer, because He is a proper Aberdeen fan, and he knows what it means to be playing in these games. Obviously, making his debut at Ibrox as a youngster, and then Willie Garner as well, who we also had on the show. He was doing the Red TV co-commentary, and I think he picked up on the inconsistency in that decision making. But Calum, we said before the game, it didn't matter who was refereeing the game because we had to focus on ourselves. But when you see decisions like that, you can understand why there's so much frustration, not just from Aberdeen fans towards John Beaton, but Scottish football fans in general towards refereeing this season, because there's so much inconsistency.
Exactly. And I'm sure Rangers fans will probably even say the same thing about referees with them making the same things. It's just, they are just consistently terrible. I mean, it is typical that at Ibrox it is going their way, which tends to happen. But no matter where they are, where they're located on a Saturday afternoon, they seem, or whenever, they just seem to be just awful, regardless. There's no consistency, and they're not even consistently shit for everyone. It's just consistently, there's just shit. That's all there is. There's no consistency at all.
And I suppose, this might be something we end up talking about in the future. Who knows if it's going to be next season or in a few seasons' time. But VAR, I just don't see how, maybe VAR helps the goal we concede on Saturday. But let's be honest, it wouldn't, because it's down to who's controlling it. And I don't trust those controlling it either.
No, could you imagine Willie Calum trying to work that out? How you work them out? That would be an absolute.
And would they even look at the potential of a foul on Calvin Ramsey, or would they have just looked at if it was offside or onside in that? Maybe. It's who knows. But I suppose the other frustration for me also came from some of the tackles that were being attributed to Lewis Ferguson. Ryan Jack, as usual, an absolute coward when it comes to tackling opponents, as we've seen already this season. You look back at the Dundee United game, a very dirty tackle on Lewis Ferguson in the first half with a nibble down the back of his Achilles. Second half, Scott Arfield does the exact same. Lewis Ferguson's down for a longer period of time, with no wonder for being the second time in that 90 minutes. Obviously, no action taken on Scott Arfield. So Vicente Bizawin takes action into his own hand and flies in on the touchline, letting Scott Arfield know what a proper tackle is. But unfortunately, the Dutchman found himself in the book, much to the Rangers TV frustration, where they felt that should have been a red card for reckless play.
I'm admittedly not seen it back, but I thoroughly enjoyed should have hit him harder. Just good to see the little muscle boy, sticking up for his teammates, getting in there, getting involved. I think he's probably used to, he knows what Scottish football's about now, I think.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a shame he didn't hit him harder. But let's just say, Calum, I suppose overall, coming away, no goals, no attacking intent. Positives, the way we defended. Connor Barron, once again, excellent. This has been a show where we've not even managed to speak about him yet. Coming into that cauldron, if you want to call it that, him and Ross McCrory in the middle of the pitch alongside Lewis Ferguson, and Connor Barron not looking out of place.
Not at all. Continually just impresses Connor Barron. Not only there's the fact he can actually play football, but he's willing to chip in on that, sort of the gritty side of the game too, which at such a young age can only be a good thing, and especially with his actual technical ability only going to improve with more experience at this level. So it's very, very encouraging. And I'd like to think he'll probably be a mainstay under Jim Goodwin for the rest of this season and probably next season, and hopefully beyond too. See how long he can keep him around for, not to turn him away too early.
Yeah, no, please don't. But as someone from the Blue Persuasion replied to us on Twitter saying that we were extremely disciplined and extremely tough to break down. However, we were probably the least threatening side to visit Ibrox this season, and I don't think you can argue with that assessment, which was probably the fairest assessment we got in the replies from fans of that side. And again, people questioning, we quoted the comments that Jim Goodwin came away with at full time, saying he was proud of the performance that the players put in. But, again, people saying, well, we should have tested Alan McGregor more, but it took Rangers till the 71st minute to get their first shot on target, which was a daisy cutter from Ryan Jack. So apart from that, I think their only other shot on target was their goal. So in fairness, Rangers didn't really test Joe Lewis.
Yeah, I wasn't really blown away by them, in all honesty. They seem to be just saving themselves for Europe, which is just seems to be the recurring theme so far this season. But they didn't test Joe Lewis massively either. It was just a bit of a rubbish game, really, all round, wasn't it? We didn't offer much. We looked better defensively than we have so far this season. And I suppose that's probably what we have to focus on, I guess. Yeah,
definitely. And, despite Goodwin's comments, again, we get the replies, and we have picked up on it as well on this podcast. It's all well and good, saying the right things. He put in the comments about, we're not expecting to get these sort of decisions at Ibrox, referring to the foul, no foul on Calvin Ramsey. But, it's all well and good, having the good sound bites for the fans to lap up, but we need to start seeing results. I know this isn't me having a go at Jim Goodwin in any way, but this coming weekend when we face Hibs, it is a massive game, for our season. If we want to have any hopes of keeping it interesting, in getting into that top six, it got to the stage where on Wednesday, I don't know if I cheered's definitely the wrong word, but felt a sigh of relief that Dundee lost in the 93rd minute to ease any relegation worries, if there ever was any worries on that matter, keeping them adrift of us. But it's kind of been the story of our season where we are just languishing towards the bottom of the table. And if we don't want to get dragged into anything messy in that bottom six, we do need to start picking up results in the next coming 3 games.
Yes, we do. I mean, just frustrating that it then benefits St Mirren, that Dundee defeat, I suppose. But the game against Hibs, I feel like everyone so far has been massive. We felt that going in, but in the long run, it's probably not even turned out to be that important, because I'd say we've been languishing. They have been a little bit. There's a few teams in there as well. But yeah, if we don't want to finish in the bottom 6, then we need to win this one. Let alone if we want to qualify for Europe or finish 4th, whatever. I think that's probably a long way away now, especially considering if we do finish the top 6, we'll probably just get battered every week. But it is. We need to win it for, to ease the concerns about not ending up in that playoff spot, and also if we are going to finish in the top 6.
I think any hopes of top 4 are fading fast. I know there are a few that are clinging on to the hope of finishing that. Even you as your optimistic self, but I think top 6 is probably where any hope remains, if at all. But if we are to achieve the top 6 or top 4, whatever, that will be done without Scott Brown, as he left Aberdeen after just playing 33 games for the clubs. 2 goals, 9 bookings, a signing, Calum, it's fair to say, that divided the support. Are you surprised, shocked to see him quit so much for that winning mentality and fighting mentality? Can't even last the fight till the end of the season.
It all just seems a bit weird. First of all, signing him, that was very weird to start with. And then actually quite liking him, that was even more bizarre. I can understand from his perspective, obviously he was wanting, to help take that next step going into that coaching role. And I suppose if his Glass was still here, then we probably would have seen him do that even more so next season and take more of a back seat in terms of the playing side of things. But with that taken away from Goodwin, I'm not really sure why that was taken away. I don't know. I would have thought they could have maybe worked something out on that side of things.
I wonder on that, though, if it's because he's been in and around the coaching setup and now he'll be solely back into the dressing room. I've seen the comments. I think Theo Tencat said on Twitter that, a player that has been a part of the management team and a part of the coaching team will struggle to integrate because he knows that he'll be obviously relaying information to the management team. So I just wonder if when Jim Goodwin said, that's you're having no say in the coaching going forward, if they kind of reintegrating into being a full-time player for the remainder of the season was too difficult given what's gone on beforehand.
Well, I think so. He came out on Instagram. He posted something not so long ago, and it was basically saying that the coaching side of things was taken away from him, which was basically why he ended up here, so he could sort of get on his way in his coaching career, even though I don't know how much impact he did have on that side of things. But I just find it weird that they couldn't have maybe worked something out in terms of he could have still been a coach in some capacity, or they could have maybe looked at it again in the summer. Maybe
because it kind of just looks a bit messy now.
Yeah, your captain with 8 games to go when you could still potentially get relegated.
Or potentially qualify for Europe. We should, I suppose, do both sides. Keep everybody happy.
It does, it just looks a bit messy. The whole thing has just kind of turned out to be a bit of a shambles. Really, I can certainly understand it from his side of things. It's just not ideal, I suppose, really. But I suppose at the same time, he's maybe not had the effect that people would have wanted when he came in on the playing side of things either, I guess.
And I guess that's what I was going to kind of get on to. What did he bring? Did he? Well, I laugh.
Goals against Rangers.
I laugh as I say, I say this as we sit 10th in the league. I was going to say, what effect did he actually have on the team? Well, but, I remember quoting Dean Campbell on an episode earlier this season, when he said that being able to learn off of Scott Brown in training was invaluable for him as a player. And I think Stephen Gunn kind of, echoed similar sentiment that a lot of the players and maybe some, certainly younger players will have learned from Scott Brown. But from a first team point of view, aside as you rightly say, a couple of moments against Rangers, that goal at Ibrox and winding Ryan Kent up at Pittodrie back in January, what did Scott Brown do for us in a positive manner? I mean, he maybe showed a bit of fight against some Icelandic part-timers. No offense to Breedleblick listeners if they're still tuning into the show.
Can't imagine they are.
No. But, that Dundee game back in November when the writing was on the wall, or seemed to be on the wall for Stephen Glass, where was the fight there? That Hearts game, a few weeks ago, where Liam Boyce was dancing about him like he didn't even exist on the pitch. When the going got tough, I didn't see that same Scott Brown that we saw and who tormented us for long periods of time as part of that Celtic side. It was clear, there was maybe the people that were saying, Scott Brown wasn't going to be a good signing for Aberdeen. They're probably saying, well, I told you so. It was evident his legs were going or gone.
I think so. I don't know. It would be interesting to see where we'd be maybe without, if he wasn't there. I don't know whether maybe we would be in a better place or a worse place. I don't know. I think it was probably a lot to ask in terms of it's not even really his fault, given expecting him at his age to, be a driving factor all of the time, kind of thing. I think we saw that as he was sort of phased out at Celtic as well at times.
He also probably didn't expect to play as many minutes this season, coming in as a supposed player coach. But yet, unless it was Celtic, he seemed to play pretty much every week for the 90 minutes.
Yeah, and then I suppose you saw how things went when he was taken out of the starting lineup, going out of the cup against Wraith, those kind of things. So it really is hard to pinpoint. I suppose it'll be interesting to see what he does next, given Neil Lennon's just got a managerial job in Cyprus. Is that maybe something that'll appeal to him? But it didn't work out, and it's just kind of a weird ending to his sort of playing career, and just a bit of a shambles all round for us. It just hasn't worked out. It would be interesting to have seen what we could have done if his wages were maybe spent elsewhere, given now we'll be without him. between now
Well,
and then.
yeah, I mean, you said like it sees what happens when we went out in Wraith, but equally we meekly went out the Scottish Cup when he played that 90 minutes as well. So, but absolutely, it is a huge wage, I'm sure, off the bill, and it'll be interesting to see how that is replaced going forward. Obviously, Connor Barron's coming in there just now, Ross McCrory. I suppose, well, we should talk about Ross McCrory. We spoke about it on the last episode with the contract extension. I don't see anything against him being club captain next season, or do you think Joe Lewis will take the armband for the last 8 games, or will it be Ross McCrory? Does it really matter for the last 8 games of the season?
I don't think it really does matter. I don't know if they'll, make a big deal of it. It wouldn't surprise me if we did see, Lewis keeping the armband between now and then the season, trying to not make a big deal of things and keep their head in the game, I suppose. I guess, but I think it's pretty much nailed on that at some point Ross McCrory will be captain. I suppose now with Scott Brown leaving, it makes the perfect sense for it to be now, if not at the end of the season, given Goodwin said, literally, that's future captain material. So
yeah, and if we could have a team of 11 Ross McCrorys, he would.
Exactly.
But I suppose on the fact that the club, or whoever you want to look at how this decision has come about, obviously Jim Goodwin will have had a say on Scott Brown leaving. Does this show that Jim Goodwin is prepared to be ruthless in getting rid of the deadwood? Now, I'm not saying Scott Brown was deadwood, but I'm looking at J. Emmanuel Thomas. He's not featured in the last 3 matchday squads. There's rumours that he's training on his own away from the first team at Cormac Park as well. Will Jim Goodwin be able to rid us of players that are maybe weighing us down, not just in terms of ability, but also in terms of wages as well?
I think so. I hope so. And in terms of his, I think it was his first sort of main interview with Red TV, sort of sit down, one of the trophy room, he was saying a lot about the recruitment side of things and the type of players he wants to be at Aberdeen. And you've listened to that, and then you look at J. Emmanuel Thomas and how he's been performing and things. He doesn't really fit that bill, and he probably will be the next to go out the door. I don't think it'll happen between now and the end of the season, but I mean, given the fact he didn't feature, not even on the bench anymore, given the game against Rangers, will he probably feature between now and the end of the season? I would doubt it unless something major happens to Ramirez. But at the same time, he'd probably be more inclined to turn to Michael Ruth. And then come summer, I can't imagine he'll be here come the end of the start of the new season. And there's probably a few others in there too. It's most interesting with the Johnny Hayes things. Talk's not going on right now, given the way things are going on the park. Would he maybe be another one? I suppose that remains to be seen.
Yeah, and I suppose, a few people have maybe raised question marks on whether or not Christian Ramirez will also be here next season. Obviously does have a 2-year contract, but will he become disillusioned with things off the park? I know, sorry to put a downer, but I guess interesting things to come through the summer to give us something to talk about. But obviously we've been working in the background. We've got a couple of features planned for when the season comes to a close. So we won't be taking a full summer break. We'll have a few weeks off, but still some content that we'll maybe record before then to give us some time off, I'm sure, Calum. But some people that won't have any time off after the Hibs game is Connor Barron and Calvin Ramsey, because they have earned Scotland under-21 call-ups.
What a link that was. Goodness me, ladies and gentlemen. Subscribe, follow us, whatever you're doing, and if you've not done so already, just for that. Congratulations. I think certainly deserved on Connor Barron's part. Fantastic news for him. I think it's absolutely the recognition he deserves, given his performances he's putting in a struggling Aberdeen side. I think it's only a sign of things to come in future. He's only 19, so he'll probably be a mainstay in that under-21 setup for a long time yet, especially given, I suppose, how strong Scotland are in midfield just now. Calvin Ramsey, I mean, not really surprised him in there, given the quality he can deliver. And maybe, it'll be nice for him to go away and play there without sort of that pressure at Aberdeen, I guess. Maybe that'll help him, recover that form.
Yeah, they'll both have a nice long trip coming back from Kazakhstan before heading to Dundee. So it'll be interesting to see kind of what minutes both of them
Very
get.
nice.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm glad you've definitely had a cocktail. But interesting to see sort of what minutes both of them get before that long trip back from Kazakhstan. And, you know, as you say, rightly deserved recognition for Conor Barron. I know he's come through the most of the youth levels for Scotland, but also Calvin Ramsey, probably recognition for what he's done throughout the season as well. And obviously with Aaron Hickey continuing to reject Scotland under 21 call-ups, it's no surprise to see Calvin in there. The full Scotland first team has not yet been named for the upcoming friendly now, with the sad situation in Ukraine taking place. Scotland's World Cup qualifier against Ukraine has been pushed back, so which will see now Scotland take on 2 friendlies in this window. Obviously, with the World Cup playoff coming up in June, I'm sure Steve Clarke's focus will kind of remain on a consistent squad. But is there any, Aberdeen players you see getting called up? Obviously, Declan Gallagher's been in Steve Clarke's plans before, Lewis Ferguson as well. Ross McCrory maybe knocking on the door, or is this maybe too soon given the importance of the fixtures coming up for Scotland?
Yeah, I don't know. I can't really see him, I guess, maybe trying to bleed in too many people, but I think players that he would, consider maybe taking if we do get to the World Cup or in those playoffs, if they were needed, then I suppose they maybe will get involved. So it's not their sort of first time. And maybe Ross McCrory is on the brink of that. The problem is, I suppose, once again, that midfield spot is just so competitive for Scotland right now.
I still look forward to the meltdown when they don't get called up.
Oh yeah, probably, yeah. But Ferguson has been involved, capped obviously as well. So I'd certainly expect him to be involved in the friendlies as well. So he's probably next in line in terms of sort of out with the sort of elite midfielders, I suppose, that we have right now, the sort of Scotland regulars. He's probably the next in line to step up into that spot should something happen, an injury, or players miss out in either the playoffs or World Cup if we get there. Be nice for Ross McCrory too, but I think probably a little bit too soon. But I'd certainly think he's on that verge, on the brink of being one of those next in line type of players, maybe.
He's just unlucky that, we're almost blessed with such good midfielders that he could get called up, but he's not going to displace the likes of Billy Gilmore, Cal McGregor, and, as much as folk are going to like me, Ryan Jack, the way he's performed for Scotland in recent, times. But it would just be nice for, that reward and being able to be involved in that stage. And obviously he has that versatility of dropping into centre back as well. So there's been a few injuries for Scotland in their time defensively. So one to keep our eye out on anyway. But back to domestic matters, Calum, and it is the riveting, exciting, big game at Pittodrie as Aberdeen return from a 2-week break to face Hibernian, Edinburgh side, who are with just 1 win in their last 10, but continue to somehow sit 4th in the league, a frustrating 5 points ahead of Aberdeen.
It is big. It is huge. It is massive. You might even say. No problem. It is probably now a must win for Aberdeen, as you say. 5-point cap. They've not been, overly convincing. It's at Pittodrie, which I suppose benefits us too. We have reason to be confident going into this game, I suppose. I don't know. I'm saying that, trying to convince myself a little bit. I
was going to say, try and convince me that we have reason to be positive.
Yeah. But it's a winnable game. We've looked better defensively under Jim Goodwin. We're obviously way better at home than we are on the road. Quite notoriously this season. Hibs, not been, overwhelming really, have they? They've just sort of dingled about a little bit better than us, I suppose. We could win it, maybe. That's not all I've got.
Well, Jim Goodwin was at Dens Park on Wednesday night scouting, I'm sure, scouting Dundee ahead of our upcoming trip to Dens Park. I'm sure he'll be making the trip to Fir Park as Hibs are in Scottish Cup action this weekend. Of course, this maybe throws out some of our predictions for the game, given that Hibs do have the luxury of a game this weekend at Aberdeen. Well, maybe you could say benefit from not playing. It looks to, if you judge by some of the players' Instagrams, Calvin Ramsey's been enjoying a few days at Glen Eagle. So, some of the players have been getting a bit of downtime before, I'm sure, getting back to the training ground next week to work on things. But Hibs have had 6 0-0s in 90 minutes so far in 2022. Obviously, one included against Cove Rangers. I'm sure Michael would love me to be pointing that out. And Sean Maloney's only won the 3 games so far in his tenure. Since beating us, I should say, actually, it's 4 wins for him. Only one of them coming in the league at home to Ross County. The other 2 wins in the Scottish Cup against Cove and Arbroath. As you said, Calum, we've been dominant at home. It'd be good to see a strong crowd there to get behind the team, because just 100 tickets left in the Red Shed as we're recording this episode. To build on that positive performance from Ibrox and, as you say, keep any hopes of top 6 Europe alive, it really is a must-win game for Aberdeen. So it'd be great to see the crowd getting back and responding to that as well.
I mean, it's got all the makings of a classic with those statistics you've got there, and that'll really have helped shift a couple there, Glenn.
Don't worry, I've got more coming up.
Can't wait. Really thrilled. It would be good. Great crowd against Dundee United as well for obvious reasons. But maybe that'll entice some people back. I don't know. It would be good to get them a bit of backing. I'm sure the Red Shed will give their vocal backing. Just a decent crowd. We know it's not going to be a sellout, but I think the players do need it. When there is a little bit of a lift, when maybe things aren't going our way or the tide turns slightly, we can sort of help turn it back in our favour. Or if things are going our way, a little boost further on. We know the difference it can make, and it would be nice for a good crowd in what is an absolutely huge game at Pittodrie. What I'm quite looking forward to as well.
Fair. I'm just looking forward to it because, other than for Martin Fraserburgh on Wednesday, I've not been to an Aberdeen game for over a month. I've not been to a game of football in over a month, thanks to COVID and not being able to afford getting to away games in recent weeks as well. But on this game itself, Calum, Hibs have not scored in their last 3 games, but equally have not conceded in their last 4, obviously including a 0-0 draw with Celtic in which was a very eye-bleeding game of football in general. But Rocky Bashiri will be returning from suspension for the game at Pittodrie. For a team, obviously, Hibs fans may be tuning into this game because I'm sure Michael is going to share this episode for us.
I hope so.
They've maybe not offered a lot going forward, but then neither have we. So obviously Hibs have been able to build a solid foundation at the back. If you look at that statistic there of not conceding in their last 4. Aberdeen are at home. We've got to be showing way more intent. Not that it's going to be hard to show more intent than we did at Ibrox, but we've really got to be positive, kind of see that attacking intent that we had against Dundee United from the likes of Matty Kennedy, if he's hopefully fit, Vicente Bizauen again. Get balls into Christian Ramirez. We've seen him have had success at Pittodrie already against Hibs this season. But yeah, we've got to be direct, get the ball on the ground and get at Hibs. And I think show that from the off, because if there is a good crowd there, as Joe Sked mentioned when he was on the show, you want as a home fan in these big games, your team to show you that intent in the opening 10 minutes to keep you engaged.
Certainly, and I think you mentioned it there. It's vitally important that we get players up in support of Christian Ramirez. In any game we've done well in this season, that's what's happened. Bizauen, whether it's Kennedy or McLennan, whoever's in, Lewis Ferguson getting up in support in midfield, Connor Barron at times too. When we don't have another striker, it's so important that those players get up in support and provide him some service, allow him somebody to actually link up with. And, that's when our nice passes of plays happen. That's when we create chances and sometimes, believe it or not, take them. And of course, as you mentioned, Hibs pretty decent defensively. That will be tough. But if we are going to get anything, probably not only from this game, but from any remaining this season, that's the type of thing that we need to happen. We need players to get up and support, and that's when problems occur for our opposition defences.
And I suppose then, Calvin Ramsey's not started a game in recent weeks. He's had that couple of weeks break now. Matty Kennedy the same. Do you expect both of them to return to the starting 11? And any other changes you see being made from the team from Ibrox?
I'd probably like to see Calvin Ramsey in from the start, just see how he can do now that it's a wee bit on from sort of the January transfer speculation and things like that, maybe with the boost of the Scotland Under-21s call up too. I'd certainly like him to come into this side and be happy for Matty Kennedy to replace Conor McLennan too, as you mentioned. Other than that, can't imagine it's going to be too chaotic in there.
Jack McKenzie maybe for Johnny Hayes?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I'm not convinced about Jack McKenzie going forward too much. I think he's a good defender. Maybe that's what we need. They do like to cause problems down the right-hand side. Obviously, a bit less so without Martin Boyle now these days, but Chris Cadden, certainly. I don't know, but at the same time, it's not an ideal situation. I would choose between, geriatric Johnny or Jack McKenzie. It's not great, and it's either or, really. I'm not too fussed at this stage.
That's fair, but I suppose, as I said, Hibs have the benefit of another game this weekend. Obviously, we're doing this segment before they take on Motherwell in the Scottish Cup, so they could be coming to Pittodrie buoyed by an excellent result in the Cup, or down in the dumps after being dumped out of the Cup. But they've also been affected by a lot of injuries. Kevin Nisbet out for the remainder of the season, although I'm sure some Hibs fans will be happy with that news. I know Michael is. But maybe that also kind of extends to why they've struggled to find the back of the net, a heavy reliance on Christian Deutsch in recent weeks. And that would be an interesting kind of physical battle between the likes of Declan Gallagher and David Bates up against someone tall with a bit of pace as well, as being strong in Christian Deutsch. Probably a battle that would actually suit, well, I hope this doesn't come back to bite me, but should suit the likes of Bates and Gallagher.
It probably will come back to bite you. I'm not sure about throwing David Bates in that one. When strikers get physical with him, it doesn't seem to turn out well. But I suppose if you look at Declan Gallagher, that should really be his game. He should thrive off that kind of thing. He should, and he's probably come out on top more often than not. Look at the size of him, the strength as well. That will certainly be an interesting one. Let's just hope we're not a total shambles at the back and give up an easy chance for Christian Deutsch. I don't know. I feel like he's not been firing too much so far this season. I think he's had struggles with injuries and things as well. It's really not. We're not selling this very well, are we, Glenn?
No, we're really not. But it's been a tough struggle to sell Aberdeen games this season. That's for sure. I'm sure the ticket office will tell you the exact same. But on top of Kevin Nisbet being out injured, Hibs do have quite a long injury list ahead of this game. Demi Mitchell, the on loan left back from Blackpool, who was quite lively in his few appearances that he's played for Hibs so far, is currently out injured. Although, if rumours are to be believed, he might be fit in time for Aberdeen. No shock there. Key players always seem to become available when Aberdeen come calling. Matt Macy, the goalie, he's been out in recent weeks. Looks set to miss the game. Paul Hanlon, Paul McGinn, Joe Newell and Kyle McGuinness all currently absent from Hibs. So, they're also dealing with injuries, which Aberdeen have had to deal with in recent weeks. Again, if you want to kind of look at their recent form, you could maybe attribute something of the injury list to that, kind of what we had with our injuries in COVID. But just such a crucial game, Calum. Not just, if you want to speak about top 6, top 4, but just in terms of it sounds weird saying like restarting. I don't even know if that's the right word, but just giving a bit of momentum to our end of season campaign, because you just fear that if we were to lose this game, that game at Dens then becomes massive, as would, the game against Ross County at Pittodrie for any top six hopes. But you don't want to be going on the road with our away record, and you don't want to be going to a place like Dens Park, Mark McGee's first game in the dugout, giving them any sort of hope of trying to make ground on Aberdeen.
Absolutely, going into those two games. I mean, on one side of the coin, you've got trying to fend off Dundee and not get dragged into the relegation battle, and then you've got County. I suppose it's not even just Dundee we've got to worry about, because obviously St Johnstone are there as well. And their run of forms, they've obviously got a home game against Motherwell when we're entertaining Hibs as well. You could maybe look at their pre-split fixtures as being favourable. You could argue that ours really should be producing 9 from 9, but with a away game in there, we know it won't, but we can but hope. So, it's not just Dundee we've got to worry about behind us. It is St Johnstone as well. And we know that, I think, just for players' confidence as well, Calum, how important this game against Hibs is. It's massive. And as bad as it is to say, when you were rattling through that injury list, I was thinking, good. We need all the help we can get right now, really. And, Calum McInnes, Michael's highlighted how important he'd been at times. I think missing out quite a lot through injury so far this season. Joe Newell as well. It could probably only be a good thing that those players may not feature. We do need all the help we can get. There's probably no shame in that, because we have been pretty bad, and it's massive if we want not only to build distance maybe between us and Dundee, St Johnstone, but also if we are going to push towards that top 6. Nothing else but a win is going to help us really in doing so. And then we need to go on and then probably beat Dundee and County too, which would be massive. Dundee obviously looking over our shoulders, and then County in terms of looking up. So time to build confidence. Nothing short of a win is acceptable, really.
Yeah, 100%. It doesn't matter how it comes. A scrappy 1-0, as long as it's 3 points for Aberdeen, that's all that's going to matter for us at the end of the day. And hopefully, when we catch up next, you'll probably have withdrawals from your cocktails, but we're also going to be speaking about not just a positive performance, Calum, but a positive result as well.
Hopefully. And if Michael joins us, which I think he is set to do for the Hibs review, then that will help cheer me up if we have won, so we can rub it in his face after the pina colada withdrawals. That would be nice. Maybe I can have a pina colada and laugh at Michael. That would be excellent.
Well, you could, yes. There's nothing stopping you from having a drink whilst we do this. Would make it maybe even more calamitous than normal. But I know you're away to go and enjoy the remainder of your time in Budapest and a cocktail. I'm away to go and binge Drive to Survive. The joys of having a half day. But as always, Calum, been a pleasure having you on to look back and look forward to Aberdeen games as usual. If you have enjoyed the episode, leave us a like, leave us a comment with your thoughts on the game coming up, your thoughts on Goodwin. Can he be ruthless with this squad? Hit that subscribe button on YouTube or on your audio platform, wherever you are listening, to keep up to date with all future episodes of Red Tinted Glasses. Until next time, thanks for tuning in.
Thank you very much, Glenn. What can I say? I just love pina coladas and getting caught in the rain.